Picture the high-tension cables of a massive suspension bridge. Thick, braided steel, engineered to hold thousands of tons of dynamic weight, shifting in the wind. Now imagine those cables slowly fraying. They are snapping one microscopic thread at a time, not from the heavy traffic moving across the bridge, but from an invisible compounding tonnage of stationary dead load. It is a Tuesday evening. Late afternoon light is bleeding through the blinds. You walk through your front door, drop your keys on a kitchen counter already covered in unopened mail, tangled charging cables, and a blender you haven't used in 6 months. You look at the living room. There is a sudden tightness right behind your ribs, a shallow breath you don't fully exhale. You don't clean it up. You just close your eyes for a second and walk past it. What I think might be happening in that exact moment isn't laziness, and it isn't a lack of discipline. It is structural failure. We are living under the crushing weight of the modern home. The traditional American dream of material wealth has quietly morphed into a psychological nightmare, and the evidence is sitting in plain sight on the outskirts of every city. Consider the $40 billion self-storage industry. We are not renting millions of square feet of windowless concrete to protect essential survival goods. We are paying monthly rent for aspirational dead load. We buy objects for the person we wish we were, the avid camper, the gourmet chef, the perfectly organized professional who reads 3 books a week. But over time, the fantasy fades and the objects remain. Every unused item in your peripheral vision exerts a continuous gravitational pull on your cognitive structures. The environment wasn't built to support this much mass. You are trying to build a stable identity in an unstable world. And the stuff you bought to secure that identity has become the exact weight that is crushing it. There is a piece of research from Princeton University I came across recently that shifted how I view this entirely. The finding, roughly, is that the human visual cortex doesn't just passively see a crowded shelf or a pile of laundry. It actively calculates it. Physical clutter acts exactly like open browser tabs in your brain's attentional RAM. Every single object in your visual field functions as a microscopic stressor, demanding processing power, which might explain the profound, bone-deep exhaustion underneath it all. You think you are just relaxing on the couch, but your brain is constantly rendering the unread books, the decorative pillows, the stack of receipts. It is 1,000 microfractures in your brain's support columns. The clutter isn't just taking up space in your room. It is actively consuming your cognitive tensile strength. Actually, I was getting ahead of myself there. Let me try that a different way. Think about decision fatigue. You open a closet packed with 40 shirts, stare at the hangers for 2 solid minutes, and feel entirely overwhelmed by the fabric. The cotton isn't hurting you, but the sheer volume of choices is degrading your bandwidth before you even step out the front door. How much of your daily energy is spent just ignoring the things you own? This brings us to a strange behavioral pattern at the very top of the economic food chain. Why do Silicon Valley elites and high-level executives often wear the exact same uniform every single day? For years, I thought it was just a pretentious lack of fashion, a quirk of the ultra-rich who had run out of things to buy. But if I had to name what is actually happening beneath the surface, it is strict structural load management. They are ruthlessly eliminating low-yield decision fatigue to preserve their cognitive architecture for high-yield operations. Minimalism at this level is not a sterile design aesthetic. It is a biological survival mechanism for high achievers. They aren't organizing their closets by color. They are defending their mental bandwidth. They look at a crowded room and see a direct threat to their processing speed. They view physical objects as heavy, demanding liabilities. And this makes perfect sense when you look at the ground we are currently standing on. For Millennials and Gen Z, the external world has become structurally unsound. We are battered by uncontrollable macroeconomic seismic events. Inflation, housing crises, a hustle culture that demands constant, breathless output but offers diminishing financial returns. The pattern of accumulating stuff was built by a consumerist society that promised safety through purchasing. We were told that buying the right things would anchor us in the storm. But that environment isn't exactly here anymore. You are. And the habit of keeping all this deadload is maintained by a lingering, desperate hope for control. When you cannot control the housing market or the cost of groceries, the lack of traditional milestones induces a state of chronic, low-grade panic. So we hoard the small things, hoping they will make us feel solid. We end up meticulously organizing a drawer full of dead batteries and obsolete phone cases, as if that will somehow hold the economy together. But what if the opposite is true? What if the only way to survive the seismic instability of the modern economy is to become radically lighter? There is a fascinating study from UCLA's Center on Everyday Lives of Families. The researchers observed that physically interacting with dense household clutter directly spikes cortisol levels, keeping the nervous system in a state of high alert. The findings suggest that our bodies perceive a high density of objects not as abundance, but as a chronic, low-level threat, which means the act of purging your home isn't about tidying up for guests. It is a controlled demolition. You are aggressively liquidating the physical noise to reclaim psychological agency. By throwing away the aspirational dead load, you are actively reinforcing your internal architecture against external chaos. You are rewiring your nervous system for lasting peace. I don't fully understand why we attach so much of our soul to damp cardboard boxes in the garage, but I know that letting them go changes the literal air pressure in the room. You can feel your shoulders drop an inch the moment the trash bag goes out the door. You stop viewing empty space as a void that needs to be frantically filled and start recognizing it as the ultimate structural luxury. An empty desk isn't missing something. It is a clear runway for your attention. A half-empty closet is a daily declaration of sovereignty. You are no longer a storage unit for a corporation's profit margins. You are an attentional architect. If there is someone in your life who is drowning under the weight of their own environment, who thinks they are just disorganized when they are actually structurally overloaded, send this to them without explanation. They will know exactly what it means. You will probably wake up tomorrow, look at the pile of mail on the dining table, and feel that familiar, quiet urge to just buy a nicer organizing tray to hide it in. The instinct to purchase our way out of overwhelm is deeply wired, and it doesn't vanish overnight. But what happens to your mind when you finally decide that the most valuable thing you can own is nothing at all? The weight doesn't disappear. You just stop carrying it.